Okay, this is Bob Coppedge. Welcome to another episode of BizTech Twists, and I am CEO of Simplex-IT, Grand Poobah, Crotchety Old Geek, all that good fun stuff, and I am joined by Ann Westerheim. Ann, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
And happy to do so. And in full transparency, this is the first episode where I actually had to restart this because I didn't do the recording first. And so congratulations, Ann, for being part of this record-setting screw up on my part. Anyway, but I'm going to force you to give a little bit of intro and background for yourself for a second time. I apologize for that.
All right. Yeah, making history here.
There you go.
So I'm Ann Westerheim. I am a lifelong technology enthusiast. I've always loved science, technology, math, and I got 3 engineering degrees from MIT and worked in the semiconductor industry for a number of years. And then that didn't really work out for work-life balance. Intel acquired our site, and I decided I was going to become a consultant, and didn't even directly go into, it wasn't IT and cybersecurity at that time. I was going to consult in technology, then saw this giant need for local technology support. So of all the technology coming out of big tech companies, where does it all wind up? What happens at the last mile of technology? How do people actually use technology? And we've been adding clients for many, many years and learning something new every single day and hopefully helping a lot of people.
And it's interesting because, whenever I think of MIT and people with multiple degrees, I immediately think, how are they going to help small businesses? Actually, no, I don't. But it's cool. But it is cool because there are so many ways that you can use the same things that are on the high level end for organizations as far as how do you bring value to an organization through the use of IT. So it does scale very nicely. And there is such a need, the whole managed service industry and the like. But what I wanted to talk to you about was your book, and it's out now at Amazon and all that. And it's Cybersecurity for Main Street, Cyberfit in 21 Days. And the subtitle, Cybersecurity for You, Your Family, and Your Local Business. And this has been out now for about how long? It's been
about a month.
About a month or so.
Yeah.
It'll probably be a couple months by the time this podcast gets broadcast. But the thing that I loved about this, well, actually, no, let me put you on the spot first. There are 2 questions. Whenever I talk to authors, there's always 2 questions. What were you looking to get personally out of writing this book?
Yeah, a big part of it is I want to write a book on my to-do list for a really long time.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted something like, I love technology, and I basically want other people to love technology too. So this has been on my list forever, and it finally, I started really annoying myself by okay, well, if I want to do this, it's to sit down and start getting this done. So kind of when I finally started making progress on this, it was really more about I had to do this because I was driving myself nuts by not having it done yet.
And that's it's a good reason.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about it from that aspect of it. But then there's the second question is, what is the reader going to come away with? What is that? What's your goal, your end goal there? Who's the reader, and what's their takeaway when you wrote this?
I really want to demystify cybersecurity. So I have a very strong belief that government and big tech can't solve this problem alone. There's all kinds of there's new initiatives, and after the Colonial Pipeline disaster, there's been a lot of talk in the news about what the government can do about cybersecurity. There's a lot of regulations coming into play. Big tech, design for cybersecurity, a lot of efforts there. But if people use 3-character passwords and aren't using MFA, it's it's not all going to work.
But one of the characters was an exclamation point. So I've heard that you add an exclamation point to your passwords and the bad guys can't get in.
That's probably at the end of 50% of all passwords. But yes, I wanted to demystify it because there's a lot of, I talk to a lot of small business owners every day, and, folks are maybe really competent in their field. They might be the best CPA. They might be running the best catering business. And then they hear about this technology stuff and they kind of shut down.
Right.
And I wanted to create something that was very accessible for people, that tried to explain things in plain English and give people the confidence that, like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I get this.
But the thing that's interesting about your book, and I haven't seen, because I've seen a lot of people take on that mission. I'm going to demystify, but I'm still going to talk about it in a strategic sense. I'm still going to talk about it from a 30,000 foot view. I'm still going to talk about it as here are all the things that are coming at you. Here are all the things that are happening. You're the first one who took it and basically said, no, here's an action plan. Here are the things you can actually do to move forward. And why, what brought that on?
I think one of the themes is cybersecurity requires everybody's participation. So that was really my mission, is to get people to take action and not just sort of learn what the terms are. And I kind of joke about it at the beginning of the book that it's like a diet book. You can read all about nutrition and exercise and everything, but if you don't actually do something about it, it doesn't matter how much you know. So the idea was to try to distill it into chunks of information, and it really is written. It's kind of designed like a fitness book or a diet book. Like, hey, follow this program, and you'll come out a lot more cyber fit at the end of it.
And you even have on the cover, you have the caricature of a person who apparently is breaking out of a computer screen, but doing so while lifting weights and, of course, hydrating yourself, because hydration is a critical part of cybersecurity. I didn't realize that until now.
Yeah.
But no,
I have my Hydrate Spark water bottle here that lights up when I need to drink. So it is an important part.
Well, and actually, it's kind of interesting because IT and technology permeate. It flows through literally flows through everything we do. And every time we have an aspect of technology that's touching, whether it's to be our personal data or our organizational data, that additional functionality is also an additional way the bad guys can get through.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things is a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not technical." It's like, well, if you get on your smartphone and you can call an Uber and watch it on a map in real time and get in, everybody's a techie these days. Technology is ubiquitous. It's my water bottle, the thermostat, all the FaceTime and all the different applications we use on our phone. Like it or not, everybody's a techie today.
Well, absolutely. And in a lot of cases, the more complicated things we're doing without being a techie, the more data we're sharing with those applications, because the applications are taking care of it for us, which opens the doors for all sorts of issues that can happen.
Oh, yeah. And people need to be aware of, when you're using Waze, the application knows where you are.
Right.
So getting people to know a little bit more about technology, but also just not putting up that wall like, oh, I'm not a technical person, so I'm not even going to try to proceed. I want people to have confidence that, they can understand, my water bottle company knows things about me. Waze knows where I am, and we live in this world, and we can't ignore the technology that's around us.
Right. But we're also not going to read a book and suddenly become so smart that we can solve all of the challenges. In other words, we can't be fed with a fire hose. And to use the metaphor that you've got, again, it's simply like, a couch potato like me. I'm not going to run a marathon tomorrow just simply because I just watched a YouTube video, or read a book on how to run a marathon. It's a bunch of steps that each step will get me a little bit closer to being that person who could do that. Spoiler alert, no, I'm not. But that's the kind of approach you took with this book, was that same kind of thing, right? You basically said, here's 21 steps.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it easy. And I'm just laughing when you said that, because there's actually an app called, I think it's Couch Potato to 5K, and it walks you through running. You run, walk, and then you run a little more. So there's an app for that.
I'm gonna get right on that.
Yeah, okay. there's just a lot of really simple things that people can do. So you look at CMMC now. That's it really going to be a hard hit on small businesses. All these requirements, and when you boil down to like what's happening in real life, and even when you look at the Colonial Pipeline disaster, it boils down to a VPN account for a user who's no longer there. A lot of things just boil down to the most basic things like patch your systems.
Right.
Don't have users on your system that don't exist in the real world, things like that. So I do believe that you can get a lot of gain in being cyber safe with a few just sort of smart and affordable actions along the way. That it isn't some esoteric rocket science that only a few people in the world could possibly understand. It's like, hey, have a strong password. If you use MFA, okay, yeah, it's annoying, but it really helps keep you secure. And that's kind of what I want people to grasp.
So to kind of reverse engineer your thought process, which no one should ever do with my thought process, just warning. But to reverse engineer your thought process, you're basically saying that it's really an aggregate of a bunch of small, simple things. So that put together can seem really, really daunting. But if you take them one at a time and you don't sweat the stuff that's tomorrow or the next day, because you will do it tomorrow or the next day or the like, you can implement MFA today. That's all you're going to implement. You're not going to worry about the other stuff. You can implement patching in the next day. And that's similar to the whole idea of you're going to walk, but you're only going to walk this far. You're going to run, but you're only going to run this much.
Yeah, and you could do it in segments, take one thing at a time, try to grasp the concept. I think when a lot of people like that chart about, the strong passwords. If you have a 2-character password, there's just so many combinations that the password could be. And the longer you make it and the more, numbers, characters, et cetera, it's like, oh, okay, it's not my IT department being super annoying and making me create a password that I could never remember.
Right.
It's a better password. It will keep you more safe. And if people can just get that process, then I think they're more likely to oh, okay, I get it. I understand why I need to do this. It's not some obnoxious IT department telling me this. There's a benefit to me to doing this. And now hopefully more people will do it.
And you refer to the fact that the bad guys, and I think this topic is not covered enough in however you want to define mainstream media, cybersecurity. The bad guys are making a ton of money. We always talk about the damage that cyber, but we don't talk about the profit that we're giving to the bad guys because that's their incentive.
Yeah, it's all about money.
Yeah, and they've got a tremendous business model.
Yeah, it's organized crime, and they're making a lot of money, and they don't care because people say oh, well, I'm a small business. Why does somebody want my data? They don't care really. They just want to know what it's worth to you, so they can ransom it and get some money out of it.
And they've got so many automated processes that you bring up the whole ransomware as a service and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And whenever I talk to somebody who says, hey, we're too small, so does Netflix know what you watch? Does Facebook know what you post? Does Google know what you're too small for them, but they do a pretty good job of knowing exactly how to market to you. And so the bad guys are the same way. They're looking to automate and they're looking to create value where there wasn't some before for them.
Yeah, and then if, for example, I have a little segment where I did go into domain names and DNS, a little bit about that. I tried not to get too deep into it, but if people get the idea of domain name impersonation, like Bank of America with one character off, if they understand that's possible, I think they're going to be far less likely to fall for a trick that involves that. Wait a second. Or, hey, well, this link was sent to me in an email, but I'm going to call the number on the back of my credit card instead. If you sort of get aware of what all the different tricks are, you're far less likely to fall for them.
And like you say, you don't need to know all of the nuances beneath the trick. And it's kind of like you should wear a seatbelt. Well, why should I? Let me go into Newtonian physics to describe how high acceleration or deceleration will cause impact on you. No, you'll survive more likely in a crash.
Exactly.
And as long as someone's able to do that kind of type of communication in a compelling way, you're going to be more successful at getting people to understand these things.
Yeah, and just trying to know what all the different scams are. And I've just, in the nature of our work, I've had people call me very smart, very savvy people who have fallen, for some scam or another. One fellow I know called up. He needed to call, actually it was Bank of America. He needed to call Bank of America. So he just Googled Bank of America and he got a fake, it was an ad up on top. He called the wrong place. He was tricked into it, didn't know it. And he said the scammers were so good. Every time he got a little suspicious, they knew exactly what to say. Like every good salesperson, they know how to overcome objections. So he said, like, well, and they would just talk him right back into it. And this is a very smart person. So people think, oh, that would never happen to me. But because there's so much money involved, there's so much incentive by the criminals to kind of figure out using psychology, whatever trick they can. They'll stay on the phone with you, seem like your best friend, from one of these call center kind of scams. And the more you know about the different kinds of scams and possibilities out there, the less it's like, wait a second, that sounds familiar.
Absolutely. And I want to talk more about that, but first, I have to take a quick commercial break. So we will be right back, and we're going to talk about selling.
Sometimes the most effective IT support model for organizations is a combination of internal IT employees along with an MSP partner that's experienced in co-managed IT services. Consider Simplex-IT. We work in partnership with your existing IT team, providing the support and resources for your organization to excel. Plus, our CEO, Bob Coppedge, is the recognized industry expert in co-managed IT services and has authored the only 2 books on the topic.
That's me.
Visit simplex-it.com and look under services to learn more.
And we are back with Ann Westerheim again, Cybersecurity for Main Street, CyberFit in 21 days. And Ann, you were speaking of something before I rudely stopped you, because I'm just rude. But you were talking about kind of the sales process that the bad guys would use when they're talking to people, on potential victims on the phone, and how they had an argument for every question, or they had a counterpoint for every question. That really sounds like sales training.
Yeah, I think some of these operations are very, very sophisticated, and they know how to come up. They know what the objections are. They're trained in it. They're probably better salespeople than the people who are trying to be the defenders against all this.
Yeah.
But another case, just in the line of work we do, we field a lot of different phone calls. Very bright woman in the community who actually wound up at the bank and took out $50,000 cash, and some crazy story about how some money was moved out of the bank. It had to be moved back in, but it had to be moved securely. And it wasn't until she actually had the cash in her hand that she realized, oh, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. And when you hear that story, it's like, how could anybody take it that far? But that's how good these criminal salespeople are. It's just really unbelievable.
Well, you put the 2 things together. One, something bad could be happening now. And number 2, I want to help. You take those 2 natural human responses, and how can we take advantage of them?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the bad guys, and if you look back through history, go watch The Sting, the movie with, was it Redford and Newman? It was all about
classic.
Yeah. It was all about exactly what we're talking about here. Convincing people, to otherwise smart people, into doing what externally looks really stupid, but being really good at convincing them.
Yeah. And that's the thing. This is just cybercrime is just a new vehicle, a very efficient vehicle, a lucrative vehicle for criminals to do what they've been doing all along.
And I don't think people realize that. I mean, there absolutely is a technical component to it as well. There are programmers who are out there taking advantage of vulnerabilities within infrastructure that are which again gets back to what you were saying earlier about patching, because there are the good guys are trying to close those vulnerabilities as quickly as they found. But a lot of it has to do with you are convinced to do something that you wouldn't normally do. Or you aren't aware that you're doing it.
Yeah, so it's social engineering. That's the term they use, and it's just using psychology against you. And I'm just reminded of a funny meme I saw online of a guy was robbing a bank, and the bank teller says, "Hey, you can do that all online now." They have found efficient ways to commit crimes and make a lot of money.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it gets back to during the late 1800s, when the trains were going crazy, A lot of people were robbing trains because
Yeah.
that's where the money was at, and it was
Yes.
less well protected than the banks themselves. So trains
Yeah.
became an easier way to go after them.
Yeah. And so I think, this is the world we live in.
Yep.
And if folks can just, grasp, there are things you can do. You're not totally helpless in the world. So you mentioned, the patching, strong passwords, MFA. You start doing all these things, there's never 100% security, but you can get a really far way there to achieve a higher level of security and taking action. And I think that part of it is people get so afraid. They either think, oh, that's not going to happen to me. They're after, the big guys.
Yeah.
Or they're thinking, I just can't even think about this. I feel so helpless.
Right.
It's so scary that people just freeze.
Absolutely.
And
yeah. And it's interesting because, again, getting back to your book, for that individual, there are things that you can do, and they can be brought into those bite-sized those bite-sized steps. And technically, in a lot of cases, you don't even have to do all of them to significantly increase your profile, your security profile. So if there's one in particular, you look at this particular say, well, I don't know how to do it. There's no way I can do that. That doesn't necessarily mean you should stop doing everything else.
Yeah. And, I get a little bit, psychology of passwords. So when there's a major breach, one of the interesting things that comes out of it is there's often a list of passwords that are published.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or just the word password. That makes up for a significant portion of all passwords.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And what the bad guys will do, because they've got automation on their side, like you were saying earlier.
Right.
So they will literally have these bots that will go out and just try those common passwords at thousands per second at every banking site, every site where they know that, hey, if I get in on 1/100%, I'm still going to get a good ton of money out of it.
Yeah, and I think now with all the work, all the news about ChatGPT, I think people are maybe getting a little more up to date on what automation can do and what.
Right.
So it's not like there's a person sitting at a keyboard in, some basement somewhere. Like, okay, I'm going to try this password. Okay, let me guess what's it. The computers have just rattled through them all pretty quickly, and I think when you see like what ChatGPT can do, and that's gonna, people are gonna be using that for phishing experiments. They can harvest all this information about you. It's like, well, nobody could possibly know. Like, no, they can get it from Facebook and Instagram, all the other places that people publish stuff online and pretty much triangulate. And there's stories out there of real estate closings where people might just put, hey, I really love my real estate agent's so great. So now they know your real estate agent. They can probably figure. Yeah. There's a lot of information out there on everybody. And computers can gather it pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to use your example, as a realtor, you want people to go out and mention you because that's a great marketing tool, is to have people say, what a great professional relationship I have with this person. Great, that person's endorsed. They're going to come use that person for services, so on and so forth. But it also just gave the bad guys some additional information about both parties that can be taken advantage of. And the same thing from a work standpoint. Boy, on LinkedIn, I want to know who works at this company, who enjoys working at this company, who's saying what a great place this is to work, so on and so forth. Oh, great. Now I know the bad guy now knows all the people who work there. And if they go to that company's website and they see one email out there is Larry at blah, 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 well, the odds are everybody is first name at blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. They can figure out the email formula pretty quickly. So with automation tools, that can happen really, instantly in that case. So, again, if I really want people to understand what is technology capable of today, how much money there is in cybercrime, because that's the motivation behind most of it. And then, hey, well, here's a couple of things you can do.
Absolutely. Yes. So how's the feedback you've got, and I've seen some of the feedback. It's been great, especially from managed service providers and folks who are actually out there. Have you gotten much feedback from, pardon my French, the guy or the gal on the street?
Yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised. I did a Goodreads, which is a website for readers and for books. I did a giveaway on there,
Uh-huh.
and I was very pleasantly surprised. I had over 2,000, around 2,000 people put their name in the hat for a giveaway for 10 books.
Oh,
So
cool.
I just shipped out the 10 books today. So I'm hopeful that over time more people will pick this up. I've had a lot of people say, like somebody who read it gave it to their husband and said, "Oh, like I actually learned something from that." So I'm hoping that that's what will happen over time. That because that's really that's who the book is for.
Right.
It's just regular people out there to say, "Oh, okay." And I open each chapter with a cartoon.
I was going to bring up the cartoons. Yeah.
Yeah, just to. It's just lighthearted. Don't be intimidated by it. And so I've been really pleasantly surprised by that.
Well, and now how hard was it, both from a natural state, because again, I got to say 3 degrees from MIT working up where there's got to be a certain tendency, or excuse me, for me, there's always that certain tendency. I want to over-explain. I want to basically give you a 3-page conversation as to why buttons work. How hard was it for you to basically, and I hate to say dumb it down because boy, does that do that in an injustice, but to simplify it so that it was very, very digestible to people who are not. How tough or how easy was that for you to do?
Well, I really wanted to make it accessible.
Right.
So that for folks who don't know all the buzzwords, and there were a couple of places like when I talk about strong passwords and MFA, like I didn't get into single sign-on at all. I figured, okay, I'm not going to touch it, but I can kind of hear in my head some people objecting to that. But I just, okay, what's the essence of this? Like, okay, you can't have your super old computer might still work, but if you connect it to the internet and it hasn't been patched in years, you're subject to every vulnerability that's come out in the last few years, right? Yep. It's just trying to distill it down to what I thought was the core most important most important thing that for a person to understand. And then there's some things I just had to stop, like, well, that's not exactly right, but I'm not going to go any further.
And I've had that same challenge because we do a ton of videos and all that. By the way, I fully expect to see some videos from you because this content is so freaking, pardon my French, video ready.
I have that on my plans, and I have to say I've watched some of your videos. I mentioned before I loved there was a DNS video that you just did where I thought you explained things really simply, that's definitely on my on my to-do list. Yep,
no, absolutely, because you've already got it written for that way. But part of the challenge that we have in some of our videos is in order for us to make a relatively simple, understandable to the common person, you have to be incorrect. You have to sacrifice a certain level of true 100% accuracy.
Yeah.
And so in a number of our videos, I'll make the comment of, look, for those of you who are really experienced geeks, just relax. I get it. It's not quite accurate. But you've done a really good job. You set the expectations in the introduction. You set it when you start by basically saying, look, this is for people who want to make progress, who don't know, like you're saying, they're just sitting back going, I don't know what to do. I'm giving up. It's too complicated. And to break it down into here are some step-by-steps that you can do, you can get it done. And it's just I love it when someone has a different angle to approach a really, really important topic, and you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I definitely do want to do the videos because a lot of people, I guess it's like I was always taught to always have a book that I'm reading. Like I was from grade school, teachers would say, "Oh, you should always have a book ready. If you have to wait somewhere, you always have a book that you're reading." And a lot of people are doing podcasts and listening to things, watching videos. So people do want to consume information in different ways. So yeah, definitely on the videos. And And I really strongly feel that once people kind of get over that hurdle of realizing, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. I get this. I see why
Yeah.
I shouldn't use the same password everywhere. Once that clicks, they're able to make a lot of progress. And that's significant progress. And they don't have to go for that last little, that 1% of the asymptote to understand all the, really technical, more esoteric things involved. But it's like, oh, okay, I get it. This is what a password is. Encryption is not the same thing. If they get those basic concepts, I think people can make a lot of progress.
So it's interesting because this gets back to the both the challenge of like from a fitness standpoint. You start by basically going, I am a couch. Or I start by basically going, I am a couch potato. I am a couch potato. I am a couch potato. But then you may start doing these steps, and at some point there's almost a switch that flips. I'm not anymore. I used to be. Now I'm making progress. And so you're basically trying to make that same kind of transition happen for people. Mm-hmm. I'm cyber inept, I'm cyber ignorant, I'm cyber illiterate to I'm learning. I'm starting to get this. And so the light just went on. So essentially people now I'm ready to take on that next day. I'm ready to understand it because I've gained the confidence. I've gained a little bit of skill and knowledge from the last 2, 3, 4, 1, whatever steps that I've done. So now I'm better prepared to do the next ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think folks were more inclined to listen. It's like, oh, okay, I got this concept.
Yeah.
And it's no longer this thing you have to shut down like, hey, I'm a CPA. I know everything about the tax codes, but I'm not going near that cybersecurity stuff. It's like, oh, okay, I get this. And just, one thing at a time. And I do believe that you can actually gain a lot of improvement in your cybersecurity stance just by doing some really simple things. And it is like, if you look at change analysis, I really believe that solving, for cybersecurity does involve individual participation. It's not, if people don't, get in and do the responsible things they need to do. And I just briefly mentioned in the book, in Finland, now it's part of civic education.
Yeah.
People need to learn about cybersecurity. And I think that that's a point that I want to get across. Like, you can do it, have the confidence. Okay, you got through day 1, you got through day 2, build your confidence. But also, we kind of all have to contribute to this.
Well, and that's one of the challenges that I've said is that not only do the hackers or the bad guys have a great business model, but there's nothing attacking their business model. It's not going away. There's nothing that's going to make them obsolete or out of date or anything along those lines, because a lot of them are operating in countries and states that absolutely 100% protect and encourage this stuff to continue. Yeah. It brings in hard currency.
There's no extradition. And so as long as they can keep making money at it, and I think that's going to be true for a long time, we want to hold government, big tech responsible. I think more can be done to design security into new products. But if people, get their new, IoT device and never change the default password, then it doesn't matter.
And to use your examples or additional examples, Target, which was the poster child of cybercrime and cybersecurity, was actually hacked because their HVAC system was compromised. And the largest casino hack that ever happened was through their aquarium was actually monitored and managed by a third party, and they got hacked. So you never know where it's coming from.
Yeah, I think the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was hacked through a Nest thermostat. So there's a lot of different ways that folks. So on the one hand, we could get angry that these possibilities exist, but they're vulnerabilities. Criminals are going to find out how to exploit them, and we have to do our part to do our best to change those default passwords and at least be aware. Put the stuff on a guest network, not the main network.
Yep.
That's a very simple workaround.
Absolutely, but it's a never-ending challenge. But core concepts such as the ones that are illustrated in your book, they're going to be with us forever.
Yeah, and cybersecurity requires everybody's participation. I was just driving back from Logan Airport. There's a big billboard. I haven't seen the billboard in a long time, but it's Smokey the Bear. Only you can prevent forest fires. Yeah, we all have to participate in cybersecurity as well. It won't happen without us.
Absolutely. Well, I 100% appreciate your efforts to it. And again, this book, strongly recommend it. Cybersecurity for Main Street, CyberFit in 21 days. I, again, am not going to be running a 5K in 21 days, but this thing I might be able to do. So, Ann Westerheim, again, I want to thank you very much for joining us. It's been great, and I wish you nothing but the best.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. And again, this is Bob Coppedge, BizTech Twist, and you're supposed to click on things. You're supposed to, thumbs up and bells and likes, and because none of that is cybercrime, or none of those things are hacked, except for the down thumb. That one's, you don't want to click that one. So catch you next time.